But tonight, Dispatches reveals that something we've assumed is good for our children could be harmful. Making them read and write too soon can cause permanent damage. A few weeks ago, you were 3, not much more than a toddler. Now you're 4 and suddenly grown up, because now you must go to school. It's strange and not a little scary, but it's also exciting. A whole new world of learning is about to open up. Or is it?
Would you get straight, please?
You find yourself under pressure to carry out tasks which seem beyond you. Pressure to read before you're ready. Pressure to write before you're able.
Hang on, because we need to leave a space.
For the first time in your life, you experience real failure.
I can't do it. Can't do it. I can't.
It's an experience from which some children never recover. It warns that up to 40% of our children may be being disadvantaged by their early experiences at school, and that a large proportion of them are being permanently damaged. It warns that even our brightest children may be falling behind. But above all, it asks the government and Britain's education authorities to explain why our children can't do what these children can. These are inner-city kids from a poor area of the Hungarian town of Nyíregyháza, near the border with Ukraine. They didn't start school until they were 6 or 7, and they've only been learning to read and write for a few weeks. Yet already, their progress is putting British kids to shame. And by 12 weeks, he's gone from this
12 hét alatt innen
right through to this.
ide jutott.
Igen.
Yes, that's right.
She's very quick. Richie here is, he's not particularly good, he's average, or this is not the star.
No. Ő nem a legjobb.
1,000 miles away as the crow flies, and immeasurably distant in terms of social expectations, Bruges in Belgium. This school serves an aspirational middle-class area of the city. It's the Middle England of Flemish Belgium. Here too they don't start school until they're 6 or 7. But then they are expected to learn to read and write in just one term.
Cook. S.
How long has Anne's been reading?
No, she's in her 4th month.
So she just started from 12 weeks ago?
Yes.
And already she's reading sentences?
Yes, she does it very fine.
Is she the best girl in the class, or is she average?
No, just the average.
She's not?
There are better ones and there are
slower ones?
Slower ones, yes.
Zurich in Switzerland. And here there's something which makes their achievements all the more impressive. These kids too have only been learning to read and write for 12 weeks. But because many are from the families of immigrant workers, no fewer than 16 of the 21 pupils here have had to learn a second language, Swiss German.
That's, for example, Deria, which is from Turkey. That's Sabrina from Switzerland. And Eleni from Greece.
And because Swiss German is only a spoken dialect, they've had to learn to read and write in what for most of them is virtually a third language, High German.
Sri Lanka. And Alain from Portugal.
Yet by just after Easter, they will be expected to read and write with reasonable fluency.
It's quite impressive.
Yes, but that's the way it goes in Switzerland.
In maths, in all 3 countries, the achievements are, if anything, even more dramatic. Last May, Dispatches conducted an experiment. We took an arithmetic test, known as the SATs, which every child in England and Wales has to sit at age 7. We translated it and gave it to this group of Hungarian 7-year-olds from a very typical inner-city school.
It's a group of average children. There are very good, excellent children, there are very weak children, and there are average ones.
So this is a very typical range of children in the school.
Of course, our small experiment certainly couldn't be seen as conclusive, but the results were undeniably astonishing. In Britain, only 18% of children reached the top level for this paper. Here, 50% reached that level, even though they'd had 2 years less teaching than British kids of the same age. The contrast with Britain is stark. Over large areas of the country, like here in East London, half of all 11-year-olds are unable to read to the basic level expected of them. Some 1 in 5 hardly read at all. So what on earth is going on? What are we doing so wrong? The answer is startling and flies in the face of everything that the British government and the education authorities are saying. We are sending our kids to school a good 2 years too early. It's a situation regarded with near despair by teachers from here in East London who've been over to the successful countries and seen what they're doing. Because when those teachers were abroad, they made a remarkable discovery. It's not what happens in primary school which makes all the difference. It's what goes on before. It's what goes on in nursery. And that suggests that our commitment to early formal schooling is seriously misguided.
What's wrong with starting early? Surely that's a benefit.
Well, it isn't, I'm afraid, although one might think so. The problem is that we miss out a crucial stage before formal education that they have. We know that because we've been over, we've taken teachers over there, and we've seen what they do.
What do you mean we miss out a stage?
Well, it's a whole stage getting children ready for formal education.
Well, our kids spend their early years struggling to read and write, and their teachers struggle to teach them. What's going on in Hungary with kids of the same age? Well, quite a lot, actually. They're learning the basics, the things that people here believe have to be in place well before they learn to read and write. And the first of those skills is how to listen. These children are 3 and 4. They won't be going to school for at least another 2 years, but here at kindergarten there is a great deal to learn. The children are learning to distinguish what's important from the babble of noise around them. Playing simple games like this is the first stage in a structured and progressively demanding course that lasts 3 years. In other successful countries, it's the same. Though for these older kids, the game is more difficult. The teacher plays 4 similar-sounding instruments behind the curtain of a model theatre. The children must remember the sounds and arrange a second set of instruments in the same order. Finally, to find out if they've got it right, the teacher pulls back the curtains. Britain's failure to take such exercises seriously worries speech and language therapists who have to deal with the consequences.
I don't really think anything very much is being done to enable children to listen. If you can't focus your attention on listening to something and tune out the background, which is something that we as adults are doing all the time without thinking about it, if you can't control your attention, the focus of your attention, then you're miles and miles away from being ready for formal learning.
The next thing they regard as of key importance in Hungarian and indeed European preschool education is teaching cooperation and social skills. This is a story about how a fox took advantage of two squabbling bears.
Dajra utáni állt az erdőbe. Volt neki két kicsi bocsuk, azok heverésztek.
No, ezt megesszük. Adidas, szétáltam, de én vettem fel.
The need to collaborate with others and the cost of not doing so is taught systematically.
Aztán hozzákezdett a lakomához. Aztán, amikor felfalta,
Ha jó testvérek lettünk volna, sajtot is ehettünk volna.
A year ago, Sandor here had a speech problem and was crushingly shy. In Britain, he would have gone to school with his problems unresolved and faced a future of educational failure. Here, he's been able to stay an extra year in kindergarten, his problems are disappearing, and his confidence is growing with every day. In fact, learning to work confidently with others is seen as crucial for all children. But in Britain, the teaching of such skills is at best hit and miss.
We don't give the social skills enough focus. We have to ensure that children know how to socialise with other children. That, to me, is the bedrock of social interaction. And if we don't teach those skills, children are isolated, potentially throughout their school lives.
Another thing they regard as central to kindergarten education in Europe is the kind of thing going on in this room. It may look like play, but actually it's part of a series of carefully structured exercises in mathematical concepts. The children are also taught an awareness and understanding of space.
Bújjatok el, mert meglepetést fogok nektek. Akkor a mögöttem lévő ernyőben vannak? Véletlenül volt, semmi baj. Hát nézem, Bibiék hol vannak, gyerekek, mögöttem?
And they're taught an understanding of quantity. The children put counters on the tree, one for each time the teacher claps. Progress is monitored, and anyone who needs it gets individual help. Here, a 5-year-old is taught that 4 objects remain 4 even when spread out. Children are not introduced to written numbers until they understand completely what those numbers represent.
The oneness of one, the two-ness of two, of understanding really what you're doing when you take away a set of objects from a larger set. These sort of...
We're asking children to do things that we know they're not really ready for. For example, you'll see 3- and 4-year-olds trying to hold a pencil, trying to write their name, and that you can see they haven't got the dexterity to hold a pencil. They haven't got the physical development to actually do that task.
They can't do it, they're not ready for doing that, they haven't got those skills in order to do it. We're turning children off, which is causing children to fail, causing them to underachieve, and causing some behaviour problems as well.
I can't do it. Can't do it.
But Britain's educational establishment clearly has little sympathy for that view. Last year, the School Curriculum and Assessment Authority told nurseries in England and Wales that they should teach 3- and 4-year-olds to
write their names with appropriate upper and lowercase letters, recognise familiar words, associate sounds with syllables, words and letters.
The paper was called, ironically, Desirable Outcomes.
Children can feel very inadequate we have children here who are on an at-risk register, really, because they're failing at a very young age. Now, in Switzerland, these children wouldn't even be at school.
They see other children that have already made a start on reading. They see other children that can write their names. They can't. That, of course, is very difficult for them. And they immediately have the idea that they've come into a place where they don't belong. Education is not for them.
Making butterfly.
I don't think they're butterflies, are they? Start it again here, look, please.
The children were making...
What do you see? What could they be making with flour and salt and sugar?
I've seen children looking utterly bewildered, completely bewildered. They know that the adult requires them to do something, and they clearly feel absolutely horrible because they know that they can't do it. They don't understand the task, and I think many 4-year-olds will not understand the task.
That fear that by asking too much too soon we could be causing long-term damage to children as young as 4 is borne out alarmingly by the statistics. We are failing, in particular, the bottom 30 to 40% who do significantly less well in international comparisons. Indeed, many appear to have given up almost completely.
So many.